GamblersAdvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, boxing has a human side to it, right? We don't talk about it enough, but these fighters are human beings. What's going on in their lives at the time of a fight sometimes impacts them in the fight. Sometimes it impacts their preparation for the fight. Right now, Leo Santa Cruz today, who I picked in the first fight, and I was incorrect. Right, Leo Santa Cruz today has revealed that his father's battle with cancer got to him before his fight against Frampton, and that he went into the ring a bit distracted. Right, he was thinking of Jose Santa Cruz, his role model, who really got him into the sport of boxing and helped him with his skills, helped him think about opponents. Well, his father's voice was missing from Santa Cruz's corner because his father was dealing with bone cancer that required chemotherapy and surgery. So Santa Cruz feels that he was distracted, that Frampton took the early rounds and his title. Right? Santa Cruz feels now that his father is back on his feet, now that his father's cancer is in remission, now that Santa Cruz can actually consult with his father and talk more about Frampton, Santa Cruz feels that he's more mentally prepared for the rematch. Also, Santa Cruz believes that Frampton ran out of gas in the middle of their first fight, that Frampton's best moments were the first half of the fight, and that Santa Cruz was able to make a comeback in the second half of the fight. Santa Cruz reasons that he can pick it up from there and dominate the match. Right now, I'm taking Frampton in the rematch. I think Frampton wins the rematch more easily than he did the first fight, and he won the first fight. Make no mistake about that. Right? I have no doubt in my mind, none whatsoever, that Leo Santa Cruz completely believes that his father's absence was the reason why he lost the first fight. I have no doubt about that at all. Right? I have no doubt that Santa Cruz was probably thinking about his father as he prepared for the match and wasn't in the frame of mind that he would have been if there were no health concerns. But here's the problem I have with Santa Cruz's narrative. If you look at the CompuBox numbers on the first fight, Santa Cruz, who's a volume puncher, threw over 1,000 punches. Right? Folks, you can't throw much more than that in a 12-round fight. Right? Santa Cruz had big volume. He threw 1,000 punches. Moreover, he finished the fight very strongly in terms of volume. Right? In round 12, he threw 114 punches. In round 11, he threw 107 punches. Right? Think about it. Now, you know, I'm not a personality profiler. I just pretend to be one here online. But Frampton strikes me as the opposite of a volume guy. Frampton is a surgeon. He's what I call a math guy. In other words, the sport for him comes down to angles and specific combinations, certain planned reactions to certain events. I believe a Carl Frampton over time picks up things, picks up your style, and becomes better and better the more he sees your moves, right? It's like a chess computer, right? The more it studies, the better it is. The more it knows what you're going to do, the more it can anticipate your next move. So let's focus on the 12th round, because I believe this is the secret to the fight. Leo Santa Cruz in 3 minutes. Let's do the math. 60 seconds per minute. 3 minutes, 180 seconds. Right? Leo Santa Cruz comes out and throws 114 punches. Now, if Leo Santa Cruz is himself, if he's back to who he believes he is, he's telling you he's going to come out, he's going to be, more of himself, he's going to throw a lot of punches throughout the rematch. Well, he throws 114 punches in 180 seconds. And Carl Frampton in that round, after looking at Santa Cruz for 11 rounds, lands 41% of his punches. In the middle of a punch blizzard, Carl Frampton is landing more than 40% of his punches. It gets worse. In terms of Frampton's power punches, in the 12th round, in the middle of a punch blizzard, Carl Frampton landed 52.5% of his power punches. In other words, Leo Santa Cruz can up the volume as much as he wants. He's in with a chess computer. Carl Frampton is going to sit there, he's going to read what's coming at him, and he's going to react. For Frampton, the added volume that Santa Cruz is throwing creates added opportunities for him. If a puncher like Frampton, in the middle of your high volume, is landing more than 50% of his power shots, folks, this is Floyd Mayweather type numbers, you're going to be hurt at some time in the fight. Let me say, the trend's equally disturbing in the 11th round, right? Leo Santa Cruz throws 107 punches in the 11th round right before the 12th. Carl Frampton lands 38.3% of his punches in that round, including 46.8% of his power punches. I believe Carl Frampton has cracked Leo Santa Cruz's code. I have no doubt Leo Santa Cruz is going to come in the ring with a lot of emotion, a lot of willpower. He's a warrior. He's going to be prepared to throw more than 1,000 punches in the rematch. Right? The problem is Carl Frampton knows him a lot better than he did before the first round of the first fight. Right? One of the lessons I have learned in boxing is not to bet against technicians in rematches. Right? Because you see a Floyd Mayweather against a Marcus Maidana the first fight. When they announced the rematch, you knew, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Mayweather's seen this guy for 12 rounds already? Right? You look at the CompuBox numbers, you notice the accuracy. And you understand, okay, the rematch is going to pick up where the first fight left off, with Mayweather figuring things out even more. By the end of this rematch, who knows? Carl Frampton might know Leo Santa Cruz better than Leo Santa Cruz's own family. Right? Very hard for me to pick against Carl Frampton. I understand there's a narrative out there that Carl Frampton started fast against Scott Quigg, and that Carl Frampton faded as that fight went along. Right? The narrative goes further and says that Carl Frampton started fast against Leo Santa Cruz, and that Carl Frampton faded as that fight went along. So the idea is that Carl Frampton is a guy who's fading in fights, and that if Leo Santa Cruz just comes in a little bit better condition with his father's input, he might be able to wilt Carl Frampton earlier. Well, how does a guy who's fading land 52.5% of his power shots in the 12th round of a fight where the other guy is throwing 114 punches in the round? Right? I know the visual is a little bit deceiving. Just understand the accuracy numbers speak for themselves. Carl Frampton is landing punches at too high a rate late in this fight for me to believe that Carl Frampton was out of gas. Right, folks? They're fighters who go their entire careers, who never are able to land over 50% of their punches in a round in a world title fight. Carl Frampton did that in the 12th round of their last fight. Right? So, let me just say, let's also look at Frampton closely. The idea that Frampton wilts in fights is contradicted by the fight a few fights ago that Frampton had, where Frampton actually got dropped in the first round twice by Alejandro Gonzalez Jr. Rest in peace. Right? He was recently murdered. Terrible. But understand, Frampton gets off the canvas in that fight. I believe it's safe to say, since he got dropped twice in the first round, Frampton may have been 3 rounds down at that point. And Frampton went on to win that fight. I'm just going to read the judges' scorecards. 116-108. That's an 8-round gap. If he started down 3, Frampton comes back and wins 11 more rounds than Gonzalez the rest of the fight. The next judge, same card, 116-108. The final judge, 115-109. Right? So that's a fight. This is the fight Frampton had right before he fights Scott Quigg. Right? That's a fight where Frampton comes back in the fight from a deficit. I don't believe the narrative that Frampton, is destined to run out of gas and be ineffective late in fights stands up to scrutiny. Right? So, I'm expecting a robust fight. I'm expecting Santa Cruz to come in and flash a lot of punches. Santa Cruz's connect rate on the first fight was below 30%. I'm expecting Frampton to make him pay for his volume. In other words, a counterpuncher knows how to counter a guy who's throwing punches. Understand, when you're throwing punches, you're not blocking punches. Right? Santa Cruz's style is such that he's vulnerable to getting hit. Right? His defense has holes in it to the point where Frampton's over 45% on power shots in the 11th and 12th rounds of the first fight. I think Carl Frampton is going to be able to land some hard shots. I think if either of these two guys is going to be able to further adapt their styles to the other, it's going to be Carl Frampton. I like Frampton in the Santa Cruz rematch, but be aware of the risk involved. Santa Cruz was a charismatic champion. He's one of those fighters who crowds love, right? He's going to be getting a lot of love from a lot of people, right? When you watch the fight, I believe even Frampton's corner expects Santa Cruz to throw higher volume than Carl Frampton, right? So this is that fight where Frampton's craftsmanship has to be such that it overcomes a guy throwing heavy volume on his front foot, right? I believe Frampton can do it. He is the side I'm betting on in this fight. Let me say too, I'll try to make a follow-up video. I don't know how to deal with knockout props and stuff like that. The first fight went the distance, right? Let me just say though, that wow, I'm not sure if a guy can withstand Frampton landing power shots at this high a percentage, right, on a sustained basis. I'm guessing Leo Santa Cruz is going to get rocked in this fight, right? I'm not so sure the fight goes the distance. Right now, the only thing I can say that I believe in this video is that Frampton wins it somehow. That's how I see it. If the odds allow, maybe I hedge with Santa Cruz by decision. But that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.